Welcome back. Laura Lynn, you know, we have a great friend of the ministry, no stranger here, and has been on the program a couple times. Before. Keith Verburs, and he's the executive director of Christian Counseling, the Christian Counseling Center, and our friend as well with the 700 Club.
Welcome.
Good to see you, Keith.
Thank you.
We always like to get a little bit of free counseling, actually.
Yeah,
we have our counselors.
exactly.
There's a reason we book a lot of them, just deal with our issues.
You know what? There's a reason why this couch, and I was trying to figure it out, but now I think I just figured it out. Laura Lynn's getting the free counseling on the
I'd like
couch.
to lay down here and just really explore what's going
really
on.
Relaxed.
Yeah, you got your work cut out for you today. You know, when we spoke last, you were talking about a lot of the things that people deal with the counseling center, and you were just starting as the executive director and moving in. And just take us a little bit more. What is a day in the life of the executive director at the Christian Counseling Center look like?
Well, yeah, it's actually a little bit different every day. I do some counseling myself, but then also there's the administrative parts of the task, looking after the center, or I do presentations or meet with people to talk about how we can, especially because we're affiliated with a lot of churches, so it's meeting with pastors and church leaders, and even how do we best set up ministries that are complementary of what faith communities are about. So that's also part of the task. Or also I go into high schools where we have walk-in clinics for students in the Christian high schools that they can just drop in and come for free counseling. And that's been a real blessing to be part of that kind of work as well. So
wow, very cool. How did you start to become a Christian counselor and also the executive director? What was the road that led you to this particular career and calling?
Yeah, well, that's when you look back, that road is it's a very interesting road, because I grew up on a dairy farm. And so to think you're a dairy farmer's son and now you're a director of a counseling agency, how does that go? But I think even there, you know, God's hand was there, because I grew up in a Christian home. In fact, I was just reflecting on that, getting ready for this, and in fact, everybody I knew went to church. And that might be a fairly unique, all my aunts and uncles and grandparents, everybody that I really knew as a kid went to church. It was just normal. We went to a Christian school. That was a very normal part of life, but it also then was a good place to learn about who God is. Yeah. And then just over time, He just unfolds His plan for you. And then as a teenager, kind of, I didn't have maybe a Paul moment, but I think I had a Joshua moment where there was a bit of a, well, who do you choose to serve? You know, foot in the world, foot in the church. Kind of remember sermons on fence sitting and realizing, no, I have to make that choice. I have to ultimately say, yeah, no, I'm going to serve God. And so then I went off to Redeemer University and first got into teaching. But even there, I was a phys ed major, but my minor was sociology. I really was interested in social work, even at that point. And then teaching led to being also an elder in my church. And that's where then the needs of people really started to come to the fore. Also as a teacher, seeing students that were struggling, how do you help them? And yeah, that just sort of led, eventually then I went back, did my master's in counseling psychology, and started a little part-time counseling, and then this opportunity at the CCC presented itself. They were looking for a director, and I thought some of my experiences lended itself to that position, and they said yes. So,
you know, we were talking about family at the start of the show, and what effect did that have on you to have so many godly relatives? I mean, is that a heritage you look back and you're grateful for that, or did it have its own issues and problems that came along with it?
Well, yeah, godly people, right? That's right, Christian people.
Yeah.
Christian people aren't always godly. Right?
No.
And so even that, like, but the difference is, like, we had a family farm, my dad and my uncle were partners, so there were different family members. So you have cousins in the mix, so it's not just your immediate family, but how do you get along with all these people? And I do them. I remember times where my mom would sit me down and say, well, you have to realize that that's that person and they deserve respect. They might be different, but they're not, it doesn't mean it's wrong. And that's something that, so that part of it, but also having maybe more than one mother even. I felt like sometimes I had 4 or 5 mothers and they all had different, and and ones were the ones that, you know, they treated you this way, and you kind of gleaned lessons out of all of them. So that was a very comfortable place to start.
You know, it's funny because you said a Joshua generation, and it's interesting because your background and the people that you get an opportunity to deal with today. And I was just reading in the 5th chapter of Joshua, and it was talking about Joshua needed to circumcise the children of Israel again because there were those that were born in the wilderness. And we've got a lot of people that are born in the wilderness. I've got an upbringing very similar to your own, that I felt like everyone in the neighborhood was my mother. If I threw a rock and broke a window, by the time I got home, my mother.
Had 4 spankings.
Well, you know what? It wasn't. It was true because a woman was Betty Sue. That Brian did this,
Yeah,
and
right.
and my mother had her hands on her hips, and
Yeah.
and you know I got a boof behind the head, a swift kick in the pants, and then I got a whooping from Mama. But and it was one of those areas that everyone. It took a village. It took a neighborhood to raise a child. And it's just not that way today. When you look at the godly heritage of Joshua, he was raising wilderness babies, people that were not born in captivity but were wild at heart. And it says that's what's going to be in the last days. Do you see now from your upbringing there is, and when you made that commitment to Christ, a difference with the people that you're ministering to from where you came from?
There's a yes and there is a no. I think God works through generations, and so you see that similar experience. But also then there can be people that feel quite isolated from, even if they have maybe even they're part of a church, but then they can still feel very disconnected and isolated from that community and feel alone and feel I have no friends. And maybe our culture with its busyness, and also I think technology, in a way, Facebook seems very social, but it's actually quite isolating, and that face-to-face contact is part of that. But then it's about, and we're using the wilderness illustration. Sometimes then I think we all want to be in the promised land. That's comfy. But the wilderness also has sandals, and it has manna. So it might not be the quantity, but a lot of times still God has one person, or it doesn't have to be the whole village in order for us to also start feeling back and connected. And God provides differently in Egypt and in the wilderness and in the promised
Absolutely.
land.
Answer your question. When you look at all of that experience and you still needed to make a decision, choose ye this day who you will serve, what was it that pushed you over the edge, that made you say, I'm following Christ, no turning back? Because I know there's a lot of people that don't have the story that I was on drugs, I did this, I did that. But even in their testimony, they haven't made that commitment. What was it?
Yeah, and I think there were little aha moments. Like I said, it's hard for me. It's not a Paul conversion kind of thing where I didn't know God and then suddenly I did. I knew Him. I can't remember a time where I didn't believe in God, and even some faith. Right, I remember praying to find my ball in the field. Now that's kind of an immature faith, but at least
Yeah. No,
there's an element of knowing God. But for me, then it was actually I was 17 years old, and I had gone to public high school after going to a Christian school. So that's where I was maybe exposed to some differences. And by grade 12, then I started to see, hey, there's a difference between my church friends and some of the friends that are here at school. And then I went to a massive conference. Youth conference in Washington, D.C. And during one of those services, it was an altar call, and I really felt I need to make a public statement to my friends even that, no, I have to now make that choice. I can't keep dabbling in both, and so that was my moment.
That was probably the moment you're asking about.
That's absolutely right.
Because all of us do get to that place, don't we? It's like
Dabbling.
we are all in or we're dabbling.
Yeah.
And when we make that decision, that's a turn in the road. That's, that's the moment that changes our life usually.
Yeah. And then there were still moments after. I think that's another clear thing. Even if somebody says, well, now I take on, then the redemptive work, the sanctification takes over. And so then God just keeps sharp, kind of you're a diamond in the rough, and then He just shaves you down, and then you get new experiences that point those things out. So it's not just this immediate fix and then you're forever good either.
Right.
Yeah, and I know the work continues until we meet Christ face to face, but Even talking about counseling and what people are dealing with today, we're going to talk more about that, Keith, and I love every time we get together. But it's a very important point that he's making, that there has to be a demarcation. Joshua said, choose ye this day who you will serve. Will it be God or will it be man? Have you made that choice today? If you haven't, today is a great day to do that. We've got some outstanding prayer partners, and they're standing by. 1-855-759-0700 is the number to call. We'll be right back.